Darling? I asked. Are you already asleep? Amy simply shook her head and muttered something indistinct. Can I ask you a question? I took her silence as consent. Can you explain to me, after so many years of marriage, why you suddenly became better at caring for my ego? Still half asleep, Amy grumbled. I've always done it for you. I watched her as she lay curled up with her back to me, hugging an extra pillow. Yes, you have done it, I said. But you did it more out of duty than desire. Why the sudden change? Amy rolled over, clutching the pillow tightly. She looked at me with her seductive blue eyes, smiled broadly, and said in a flirtatious tone, I don't remember you complaining. I smiled back at her. My longtime friend and lover, whom I met over 2 decades ago at a backyard summer party. I'm not complaining, I said. I'm just curious why you suddenly changed your attitude. Amy got up from the bed, placing her hands on her hips, and looked at me. We can go back to how things were if you prefer, she said angrily. No, I like your new skills. I wanted this, I said. You're almost as good as some of my old college girlfriends. Amy blushed with anger. Before she could respond, I added, but you still haven't answered my question. Why did you get better? Did you read articles, talk to friends, or maybe undergo training? What do you even mean? Amy exploded. I'm not accusing you, I replied calmly. I'm just trying to understand. You've never shown much enthusiasm for this, and suddenly everything changed. I'm curious why. Amy grabbed a pillow and headed for the door. As she left the bedroom, she angrily shouted, Stop bothering yourself about it, because I'll never do it again. Amy was halfway down the hallway when I called after her from the doorway. It doesn't matter if you tell the truth today. I'll find out tomorrow. What do you mean? Amy asked, her jaw dropping. It means, I said slowly, that the private detective I hired almost 6 weeks ago has finished his report. I'm meeting with him in the morning. I suspect your new and improved skills will be a significant part of that report. As I closed and locked the bedroom door, I saw Amy's jaw drop. Her knocking, sobbing, and pleading continued for over an hour as I lay in our double bed, crying into my pillow. Amy and I got up early the next morning. Since I didn't want to talk to her, I set my alarm for 3 a.m. I dressed in sports clothes and left the house within 5 minutes. My workout that morning lasted 2 hours, leaving me exhausted. Afterward, I took a shower and got dressed in the clothes I had placed in my car the day before. At just before 6 a.m., I settled into a table at my favorite breakfast spot, 2 blocks from my office. After ordering coffee, I turned on my phone and was immediately bombarded with text messages and voicemails from Amy. I ignored them all and sent a text to my boss. Can you meet me at Lucy's before work? Do not rush. 30 minutes later, I received a reply. Of course. At 7:30, Stacy flew into Lucy's, looked around, and, noticing me, plopped down on the bench opposite me. She ordered coffee and a bagel to go, then turned her attention to me. Her eyes widened as she said, You look like crap. Yes, I look like crap, I replied. And I feel even worse. Is there anything at work I need to know about? She asked. I shook my head. Stacy relaxed before I even finished my answer. No, it's personal, I added. I'm convinced Amy is cheating on me. She almost confirmed it last night. This morning, I'm meeting with the private investigator I hired. His report is ready, and I'll find out all the unpleasant details. I paused, then continued. I just want to warn you. I'll be sneaking in and out of the office while I sort out this mess. Stacy sat silently, collecting her thoughts. Finally, she asked, How can I help? If you don't have a way to fix it, I'm not sure you can do much, I said. I'll take the next 2 days off, but will stay in constant contact with the office. This will help me get through until the weekend. I'm going to stay away from Amy for a while. I'm meeting with my private investigator this morning and my lawyer tomorrow morning. In conclusion, I shrugged my shoulders. Don't you think you're getting ahead of yourself? Stacy asked. Unless you're not telling me something, have you seen any evidence? Last night, I provoked an argument about intimacy, I explained. Amy quickly became heated and ran out of the bedroom. I told her she didn't need to answer my questions. My private investigator would answer them in the morning. If you had seen the look on Amy's face, you would be 100% sure of what the report would say. You need to talk to her, Chris, Stacy insisted. I know I will, I replied. But not now. Where will you stay? She asked. I'll rent a room. Her suitcase-sized purse clinked as Stacy rummaged through it. Finally, she pulled out a set of keys. Taking one off the ring, she said, Here's the key to our cottage. It's only 35 minutes away. We won't be using it until the end of the month. Handing me the key, she asked, Can I give you some advice? Certainly, I replied. If everything goes as you expect, she began, your life will get worse before it gets better. Life will be crap for a while, and then one day you'll wake up and not feel like crap at all. You'll just be miserable. That's the start of recovery. You seem to be speaking from experience, I observed. My ex divorced me 12 years ago. It was cruel, she said, taking a sip of coffee. Stacy continued, I don't talk about it much, mainly because I'm embarrassed. I ruined my life, my child's life, and Tom's life. His family despises me. My son's friends hit on me because they know. I get it. You don't have to tell me things like that. Stacy sighed. Even after 2 years of weekly therapy, I still have more questions about my idiotic behavior than answers, she confessed. Each of us smiled sadly. Stacy continued. Tom found out about my infidelity in the worst possible way. He tested positive for an STD. I infected my husband and my best friend. I was at a loss for words, so she continued. It only got worse, if that's even possible. I panicked and blamed Tom, saying he was the one who infected me. We both knew. Hell, everyone knew. I was the cheater. Why did you do it? I asked. Stacy stared at the tabletop before admitting. Because I could. Because I wanted to feel that feeling again. Because I wanted to have a nasty secret. Because I liked the thrill of something illegal and anonymous. She paused. I travel on business just like you. Once or twice a year, I met an interesting man and invited him to my room. Looking back, it seems so stupid. The silence stretched between us until Stacy finally asked, Have you ever cheated? No, I replied honestly. To be honest, I've never given in to temptation. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an angel. I like to flirt, and I like to know that women find me attractive. But I've never seriously thought about betraying Amy. Why do you think that is? She asked. It's just how I'm built. I shrugged. Life with Amy has always been pretty vanilla. She doesn't like to experiment. But a regular night with Amy is always better than the kinkiest one-night stand I had in college. What made you suspicious? She pressed. Amy and I have always had an active sex life. Even after 25 years, we still get together 2 or 3 times a week. But over the past few months, Amy has become a little more aggressive, a little more adventurous, a little more something, I said, shrugging again. A couple of months ago, with a growing lump in my stomach, I hired a private detective. I'll know the results in a couple of hours. I bet Amy will call the office looking for you. What should we tell her? Stacy asked. Tell her I'm taking a short vacation and won't be back until next week. Stacy paid our bill along with her bagel. She leaned over, hugged me tightly and said, "Hold on. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you." Our daughters, Julie and Kate, were juniors at the University of Connecticut. Julie was exactly 9 months older than Kate. Kate had skipped 4th grade and ended up graduating from high school in the same class as her older sister. Julie followed in my footsteps and majored in electrical engineering, while Kate majored in chemistry and planned a career in medicine. Earlier that day, I called Kate on her cell phone, telling her that I needed to speak with her and Julie later that afternoon. I also asked them not to contact their mom until we had talked. When we met, Julie exclaimed, "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom has called each of us a dozen times. She must know we're dodging her calls." I kissed Kate on the cheek, hugged Julie, and led them to a table in a quiet corner of the UC Student Union. "You look like crap, Dad," Julie said. For the first time in weeks, I laughed heartily. Those were the exact words Stacy had said to me earlier in the day. "Yes, you're not the first to notice this," I replied. Kate's turn came next. "Just tell us, Dad. We're worried. What's happening?" I had rehearsed in my head how to answer this question, but when the moment came, I was at a loss for words. Instead, the sobs I had been holding in since meeting with the private detective erupted in a fountain of tears. Both girls jumped out of their chairs and ran into my arms. My daughters held me tightly until I was able to regain control of my emotions. "Sorry I have to tell you this," I said finally, "but I'm filing for divorce from your mother. She's been having a long-term affair with a colleague." Julie began, "But Dad, you—" She couldn't finish her thought. "Yeah, baby, I'm sure. I have proof," I said. Julie's jaw dropped, and Kate began to cry. Julie spoke next. "Dad, I want to see the evidence. I know you're not lying, but I need to see it." From the investigator's report, I pulled out a photo of their mom and Mike Brooks leaving the house their real estate firm was trying to sell. In the picture, Michael and Amy stood on the porch and kissed. The girls looked at the photo together, and Julie began, "Dad, honey," I interrupted. "I have photos, videos, text messages, and emails. I will never show these to you or Kate, but I've seen them. They're awful." At this moment, both girls were crying. Through her tears, Kate asked, "Are you really going to divorce Mom?" "Girls, at the moment, I don't see an alternative," I said. "I know I have never been a perfect husband or father." I raised my hand to stop their protests and continued, "But I've always tried to do the right thing. Most of the time, I succeeded. Sometimes I was wrong, but my mistakes were never intentional, and I always corrected them immediately. I've invested everything I have into my marriage and family. I have nothing more to give, and it seems like Mom needs more." The girls stopped crying and listened carefully to my words. "I still love your mother, though not as much as I did 6 weeks ago when I first became suspicious. But I don't really like her anymore. I certainly don't trust her, and I can't imagine ever trusting her again. The worst thing for me is that I've lost your mother's respect. She humiliated me in the worst ways possible, and she didn't care." A brief silence followed, broken by Julie's phone ringing. We all looked at the screen. It was Mom calling. "Don't," I began to say, but before I could stop her, Julie grabbed the phone and angrily answered, "Sorry, Mom, but Kate and I don't have time for you. We're consoling our grief-stricken father. If you need someone to talk to, just call your intimate buddy." We could all hear Amy screaming hysterically as Julie hung up. When the phone rang again, Julie immediately turned it off and Kate followed suit. "I'm sorry you find yourself in the middle of this terrible mess," I said. "Your mom is still your mom. She loves you, you know that. I expect things to be rocky between you and Mom for a while, but I also expect you to treat her with the respect she deserves." When the girls began to protest, I raised my hand again. I'm not asking you to accept her infidelity or the irreparable damage it's caused to our family, but we will all have to learn to live with it. I looked at each of them and continued, she's your mother. You need to accept and love her, warts and all, just like you need to accept me in the same way. After leaving the UC campus, I stopped at a burger joint for a bite and a well-deserved craft beer, then headed to my parents' house. I rarely visited them unannounced. As I sat in their driveway, gathering my thoughts, I saw the front door swing open. Dad came out onto the porch and Mom followed closely behind. They stood there together, watching me as I sat in the car. Finally, I gathered my courage and got out. As I started to walk up the path, Dad came down to meet me. He wrapped me in a big, bear hug, and the strength I tried to muster crumbled. I unashamedly burst into tears on his shoulder. "My boy," Dad murmured. "My boy." Mom echoed softly as she joined us. "Your mom and I don't know what's going on, but Amy's frantic phone calls alerted us that something was wrong. We expected you to show up this evening." Once inside, I told my parents about Amy's affair with her coworker. Mom asked gently, "Do you think counseling could help you deal with this?" Mom had always been an optimist. In truth, she considered Amy her daughter. Tears streamed down her cheeks as I shook my head. "I have no desire to see a therapist," I said. "I'm not perfect, but I treated Amy and the girls like queens. I didn't do anything wrong, and I don't deserve the cruel, disgusting treatment Amy showed me. But you spent so many wonderful years together," Mom sighed. "You're right, Mom," I admitted. "We had a wonderful life together, until Amy, and only Amy, ruined it. This wasn't a one-night stand. It's a love affair between two selfish, married people who don't care about anyone but themselves." I could see the wheels turning in Mom's head as she searched for another approach. Finally, I stunned her by asking, "Why do you want me to be miserable living with a lying, cheating?" "Please, Chris," Mom interrupted, her voice pleading, "don't call Amy such dirty names. At least not in front of me." I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. "I'm just trying to get my point across, Mom. Amy has happily accepted everything I've given, but it's not enough. She took so much more, and in the process, humiliated and disrespected me." I continued, my voice trembling. "I'll ask again. Don't I deserve better?" Dad interrupted, his tone calm but firm. "Give your mom a break. We're all trying to make sense of what is still a shock. You know that your mom and I will support you in any decision you make." He paused for a moment before continuing. "But you must understand something. If it's possible, we would like to maintain a relationship with Amy and her family. It certainly won't be as strong as it is now, but I pray Amy's actions don't make that impossible." When Dad finished, Mom's cell phone rang. She looked at the screen and said, "It's Amy." Thinking for a second, she looked me in the eye and said, "I won't avoid Amy's calls and I won't lie to her. I will never ask you to do that either." Dad and I sat in silence as Mom answered the call. "Hello, Amy. He arrived here 10 minutes ago and told us about your behavior. I suppose he'll stay here for the night now. Sorry, Chris, but Amy is on her way." "Don't worry about it, Mom. I'm going to go," I said, standing. "I'll call you in the morning." Mom's voice quivered as she asked, "Where are you going?" "Stacy has a family cottage on Lake Cooper. She's letting me use it for a short time," I explained. "You'll have to talk to her eventually," Dad said quietly. "I know," I replied, "but I'll do it on my time, not hers. I'm just not ready." "What should we tell Amy when she gets here?" Mom asked hesitantly. "Tell her I'm not ready to talk to her," I said. "I know you won't lie, but I expect you not to tell her where I'm staying." Mom started crying. I walked around the table and hugged her tightly. Dad joined us, and the three of us, the Harrington family, stood there silently consoling each other. Mom and Dad gave me the emotional support I desperately needed. After officially starting the divorce process with a visit to a highly recommended lawyer, I headed to my mother-in-law's house. Amy's car wasn't in the driveway, so I parked and walked up to the front door. "This is really bad, isn't it?" Frank Wilson greeted me as he opened the door. Those were his first words. "It can't get any worse," I replied. Frank stood in the doorway, blocking my entrance. "Who cheated?" he asked bluntly. "She did," I said simply. "Do you have evidence?" Frank pressed. When I nodded, Frank yelled, "Damn!" He turned, leaving the door open, and walked into the kitchen. I followed him inside. Eileen, Amy's mother, sat restlessly at the kitchen table. When I entered, she raised her head and, pointing to the coffee maker on the counter, said, "The coffee's fresh." I poured myself a cup in silence. Frank, meanwhile, pulled a bottle of Jack Daniels from the cabinet. After sitting down at the table, he added a couple of shots of bourbon to his coffee and slid the bottle toward me. I poured some into my cup as well. "Can I see the evidence?" Frank asked. Staring down at the table, I replied, "I'll let you see the written report, but I won't show you any photographs or videos." When I looked up, Frank swore under his breath. Meeting his eyes, I continued, "Frank, I beg you, don't ask to see the photographs. No father should ever see his daughter doing what's shown in those pictures." Frank collapsed into his chair, devastated. Eileen placed a hand on his shoulder and then turned to me. "Is there any hope that your marriage will survive?" she asked. "I met with the lawyer this morning," I explained. "He'll complete the paperwork early next week and file the papers in court on Wednesday. Amy will have the opportunity to pick up the documents in his office, or we can serve her officially." Eileen's eyes flashed with anger. "I can't believe you're ruining your marriage with such disregard." "I'm not destroying anything, Eileen," I said firmly. "It's Amy's fault. She left me." "But it was only once," she shouted. I slammed my hand on the table, my voice rising. "It wasn't just once." Taking 3 deep breaths to calm myself, I regretted the bourbon I'd added to my coffee. This happened more than once. This didn't happen twice. Only Amy and her intimate buddy know exactly how many times they've been together. But their romance has been going on for months. We sat in silence for a moment before I continued. "This is the second marriage for each of you," I said, glancing between Frank and Eileen. "You both ended your first marriages because of infidelity." Frank quickly replied, "But our marriages were new. Yours has lasted 25 years. Surely that must mean something. Love, trust, and respect," I said, echoing the words Frank had told me hundreds of times over the years. A marriage should have equal parts love, trust, and respect. I don't trust Amy, and she sure as hell doesn't respect me. Frank sighed. "Will you be fair to Amy in the divorce?" "According to divorce laws, I have no choice," I said. "But you know me. I'm not going to make this any more difficult for Amy and her family than it needs to be." "What about the girls?" Frank asked. "Yesterday afternoon, I went to their campus and we talked. The girls know I'm filing for divorce, and they know the reason why. They're not happy with Amy. But honestly, I don't think anyone is happy with her right now. It may take some time. I promise they'll come to their senses," I said. "I have no right to ask." Eileen interrupted me. "You can ask me anything. I'm divorcing Amy, but I have no intention of divorcing you and Frank. I hope we can continue our friendship and relationship." Tears flowed from Eileen's eyes as she asked, "Please talk to Amy." I will, I promised. But not today and probably not for the next few days. I will talk to her, though. Mary Beth Johnston had been Amy's close friend for many years. Their relationship could have been closer, but I had always been wary of Mary Beth and her husband, Phil. From the first time we met, I learned that Mary Beth and Phil had an open marriage. While they didn't actively involve singles or couples in their lifestyle, they were far from secretive about it. Over the years, they often shared R-rated stories about their activities. There had been a few occasions when Amy's interest in swingers parties or friends with benefits relationships made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But in the end, I trusted my wife completely. I can't believe you're treating Amy like that, Mary Beth snapped as she sat across from me in the restaurant. Yes, she made a huge mistake, but she's sorry. You need to put on your big boy pants and get over it. Go have a night with some chick if you want, but don't do anything stupid. Don't worry, I replied evenly. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Mary Beth looked at me doubtfully. Amy was under the impression that you were seeking a divorce. I am, I said firmly. The documents will be submitted on Wednesday. Filing for divorce is not stupid. This is what normal people do when they want to get rid of their lying, cheating spouse. Before Mary Beth could continue, I asked, You've known me almost as long as Amy has. You've also known about your open marriage all this time. When have I ever given any indication that I would accept an open marriage or an unfaithful wife? Mary Beth was stunned. Not once, she stammered. Then, as if speaking to no one, she murmured, This is such a nightmare. My immediate response was, This is a nightmare. For Amy. For me. For our children. For family and friends. I leaned forward and continued, Mary Beth, this is about to become a nightmare for you and Phil too. Coming to her senses, Mary Beth snapped, Of course this is a nightmare for Phil and me. We've all been friends for so many years. I smirked as my veiled threat flew over her head. What? She asked, confused. What followed, I said calmly, was excitement. I hired a private detective to investigate Amy's suspicious behavior, I continued. Mary Beth's eyes narrowed. Yes, so what? He caught her cheating? Not only that, I said. The private investigator retrieved the contents of all text messages between you and Amy over the past 6 months. Mary Beth's face froze as she processed the information. I pressed on. I know Mike was a member of your swingers group before he got married. I know you told Amy he had a big man tool. When you found out he was working with Amy, you encouraged her to pursue him. I know Amy kept you updated on their weekly dates. I know every nasty detail. You're pathetic. Mary Beth jumped up. Listen, Chris. Before she could continue, I cut her off. Every action has a consequence. The consequence of Amy's infidelity is divorce. The consequences for you and Phil won't be as bad. But I'm going to do everything I can to ruin your lives. Her eyes narrowed in disbelief. How the hell are you going to do that? Smiling for the first time, I said, I'm glad you asked. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Slowly, I unfolded it and slid it across the table. What's this? Mary Beth demanded, snatching it from my hand. Her eyes scanned the heading, which read, Subject, Mary Beth and Phil Johnston ruined my marriage. Friends, my name is Chris Harrington. I have been married to Amy Harrington for almost 25 years. Except for the last few months, my marriage has been perfect, or so I thought. Due to the direct influence of Mary Beth and Phil Johnston's open marriage, my wife cheated on me, and I am now filing for divorce. A 25-year marriage has been flushed down the toilet. I am writing this letter as a warning to others so their marriages will not be ruined by Mary Beth and Phil's cavalier attitude toward marital fidelity. My wife cheated with a swinger friend of Phil and Mary Beth's. Mary Beth encouraged the relationship and even told my wife, Amy, that she would never forget it. Mary Beth was right. My wife will never forget her affair because it led to the breakdown of our marriage and the destruction of our family. Whether you have a personal, business, or social relationship with the Johnstons, please be aware of their complete disregard for marital vows and their willingness to sabotage other marriages. Perhaps if I had chosen our friends more carefully, Amy and I would not be getting divorced. Sincerely, Chris Harrington. Mary Beth's face turned red as she finished reading. You idiot, she hissed. We'll sue you if you send this to anyone. I chuckled, leaning back in my chair. My lawyer reviewed the email and the text messages from the private investigator's report. He concluded, everything in the email is true, I said. Mary Beth's face turned pale. Who the hell are you sending this to? I have an email list of every teacher and administrator in your school district, as well as members of the Board of Education. That's 38 names and email addresses, I replied calmly. I also have the contact information for employees at Phil's company. Of course, there are over 300 people working there, but I suspect the email will make its way around. Members of your country club and church will receive a copy. And there are several other organizations you and Phil are involved with. They'll get copies as well. Mary Beth sat with her mouth open, stunned. You can keep this copy for yourself, I said, rising from the table. Let Phil read it so he knows exactly what's coming. Have a nice life, you disgusting piece of... I didn't finish my sentence. As part of the private investigator's report, I had learned that Lucy Brooks, the wife of Michael Brooks, took her children to play at Willowbrook Park every Saturday morning. She and her children met with a usual group of mothers and babies there. When I arrived, Lucy recognized me immediately. Chris, I haven't seen you since the office holiday party. What a pleasant surprise, she said with a warm smile. Good to see you, Lucy, I replied. 7 mothers turned to look at me, their curious gazes following the exchange. I continued, I admit, this meeting was not accidental. I was hoping we could talk privately for a few minutes. Lucy nodded politely, though her cheerful demeanor shifted as she noticed my somber tone. Her smile faded, and a flicker of understanding crossed her face. Chris, this is... She began, but her voice trailed off as realization dawned. She stared at me, her face going pale. Lucy's hands trembled, and her friends immediately picked up on her distress. Are you okay? Asked a plump blonde sitting next to her. Lucy didn't respond right away, lost in a short trance. Another mother, sharper in tone, asked, What's going on? I'm fine, Lucy finally managed, though her voice was shaky. I think we need a little privacy, I said gently. That would be best. But it was clear this wouldn't happen easily. A slender, attractive red-haired woman jumped to her feet, glaring at me. Chris, this is my overprotective older cousin. Aggie, Lucy said, introducing her. Aggie, meet Chris Harrington. Chris's wife and Mike work together. I suspect he wants to talk to me about the issues I told you about. Aggie crossed her arms. Female intuition, huh? So I wasn't imagining things after all, she said angrily, glaring at me. I pointed to a picnic table about 15 meters away. How about Lucy and I sit over there? It'll give us the privacy we need without being too far away. Lucy stared blankly at the ground, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Aggie rushed to her side, hugging her tightly as they both began to sob. When they parted, Aggie's angry glare softened as she noticed my own wet eyes. I didn't just bring bad news, I told her. I'm stuck in the middle of this mess too, just like Lucy. With Lucy by my side, we started toward the picnic table. After walking just a few steps, Lucy stopped and turned around. "Aggie, will you take the children home with you?" she asked softly. Aggie replied, "Of course, Lucy. If necessary, they can stay for the weekend." Aggie smiled sadly and nodded. Lucy and I sat across from each other at the picnic table. "How long have you known?" I asked. Lucy sighed deeply. "Unfortunately, this isn't my first rodeo. We got married a little later than most and had children almost immediately. After our second child, Mike had a vasectomy. His first affair started 6 months later. The second one began a year after that." She paused, her voice trembling. "This is the third strike. I suspected things had gone wrong within a month. I'm struggling with the thought of divorcing Amy," I admitted. "I know it's the only outcome, but I constantly doubt myself. Can you tell me why you stayed with Mike after his first 2 affairs?" Lucy looked down at her hands. "Mainly because of the children," she said. "Actually, entirely because of the children. I grew up with an angry, divorced mom and a dad who only came by once a week. I didn't want that for my kids. I still don't. But this is their future now." She wiped away a tear. "Luckily, I have a strong family nearby. They'll help me a lot." I nodded, understanding her reasoning. "Do you know why Mike cheats?" I asked gently. Lucy's expression darkened, and she nodded. "He takes pleasure in turning good girls into bad ones. I wasn't a virgin when we got married, but I was very naive when it came to intimacy. Mike was my lover and my teacher. He had high expectations, and when I met them, he rewarded me with incredible climaxes. I loved being his." Her voice cracked. "But I wanted it to be in a loving and faithful marriage." She paused for a moment before asking, "Do you have proof?" I pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to her. "I would suggest giving this to your lawyer without looking at it," I said softly. "Mike and Amy weren't kind to us during their meetings. There's nothing in there but heartbreak." Lucy stared at the envelope, her hands trembling as she held it. "What made you suspect?" she asked finally, her voice barely audible. I chuckled and said, "Obviously, Mike had the same hopes for Amy. Like a good dog, she enjoyed the tricks she learned and shared them with me." While we were sitting there, Lucy said, "I've decided to stay at Aggie's house for the weekend. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you take me home so I can pack my things for a few days?" Before I could agree, Lucy added, "I have to warn you. Mike will be home. No offense, but I'm not worried about your husband." I said, "I'd be glad to take you home." Having agreed with Aggie, Lucy returned to me, and we headed to my car. The drive to her house was mostly silent. As we pulled onto her street, she pointed to an SUV parked on the side of the road and said, "Pull next to that truck." I did as instructed and watched as Lucy waved to the driver. She then pointed ahead and said, "That's my house, the white colonial, 5 houses down on the left." As I pulled into the driveway, the SUV followed and parked behind me. Mike was in the middle of the front lawn pushing a lawnmower. Everything happened quickly. Mike waved at Lucy as she stepped out of my car, but 2 women immediately got out of the SUV and hurried to her. They squeezed Lucy between them protectively and escorted her to the front door. A very large man followed close behind, and once they were inside, he stood guard at the entrance. An older man climbed out of the SUV just as I was getting out of my car. He approached me with his hand outstretched. "I'm Larry Green," he said. "Lucy is my daughter." I nodded, shaking his hand firmly. At that moment, Mike walked toward me, visibly shaking and pale. "Chris? Chris Harrington? What is Lucy doing with you?" "I met her in the park this morning," I replied evenly. "I had a package, a very large package. from my private investigator that I wanted to share with her. Before Mike could respond, Larry interrupted. You're a piece of work, Mike. You were born a piece of crap and you'll die a piece of crap. You just lost the only worthwhile part of your worthless life. Mike's face twisted in anger. This is all, he shouted, then turned and ran to the front door. Stay out of my way, Georgie, he yelled. I guessed that Georgie was the giant now sitting on the top step of the porch. Without moving a muscle, the man waited until Mike was about to walk past him. Then, with the grace of a cat, Georgie sprang to his feet, placed both hands on Mike's chest, and shoved. A second later, Mike was flat on his back, the wind knocked out of him. Larry glanced at me, eyebrows raised. It looks like Mike slipped, I said with a shrug. Larry nodded. Yes, that's exactly what it looked like to me. Eventually, Mike staggered to his feet. He turned and shouted, It's all your wife's fault. She came for me. Everyone knows she's just a... I can't argue with you, Mike, I said. Amy is a... I caught myself and added, but she's not my problem anymore. I laughed sadly, but my emotions threatened to betray me. I didn't want Mike to see how hurt I really was. At that moment, Larry put a hand on my shoulder. He squeezed gently, and I felt a surge of reassurance. You'll make a great couple, Mike, I said bitterly. Amy knows you're a cheater, and you know the same about her. What do you think will come of this? I don't want this, Mike shouted. I laughed again and replied, Well, she's lucky. She already has enough problems without being saddled with someone like you. I turned to Larry and shook his hand. This is not worth my time or energy. I'm leaving. Take good care of Lucy. She seems like a wonderful woman. 2 weeks later, Amy was officially charged, and her lawyer contacted mine. Life had settled into a new, miserable normal. During lunch, I checked my voicemail and found a message from my mother-in-law, Eileen. Hello, Chris, this is Eileen. I'm calling to remind you of your promise to arrange a conversation with Amy. I consider it a personal favor if you called her. Thank you. I love you. I gritted my teeth and sighed as I dialed my home number, knowing Amy would be at work. I left the following message. Amy, this is Chris. I stayed at Stacy's family home on the lake. If you want to come over for lunch on Saturday, I'll make sandwiches. Can we talk? Meet me at the picnic table in the backyard at noon. When Saturday came, Amy arrived promptly. Thanks for meeting with me, Chris. Lunch looks delicious, she said as we sat across from each other at the picnic table by the lake. Although she didn't have the same glow I'd seen every day for the past 2 decades, Amy still looked good. Good to see you, Amy, I said. Thank you for coming. Amy looked around, taking in the tranquil surroundings. It's so calm here, she remarked. I agree, I said. When I was thinking about new living arrangements, my first thought was to move to an apartment in the city center, near my office. I think I've changed my mind, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I might stay on the lake and look for property in the area. I didn't want my comment to hurt Amy, but I could see the devastation in her eyes almost immediately. Amy, She interrupted me with a wave of her hand, her eyes welling up with tears. You don't need to apologize. I'm just too sensitive. She looked up from the table and, with a shaky voice, continued, I'm so scared. Her statement lingered in the air, heavy with emotion. I watched her carefully as she collected her thoughts. I've been scared before many times, she admitted. New challenges at work often paralyzed me. The challenges of raising 2 smart, athletic, beautiful girls scared the living daylights out of me. But you were always there for me. I had my team, and I knew that together we could conquer anything. Smiling, I remarked, We did a good job, didn't we? We shared a bittersweet smile as we sat quietly for a few minutes, eating our lunch. I poured more beer into my glass and refilled Amy's half-empty glass. I've been seeing a psychoanalyst, Amy sighed, breaking the silence. Dr. Power is amazing. She's helping me come to terms with the end of our marriage and move forward as a team. I'm happy for you, Amy. I hope you find the answers you're looking for, I replied sincerely. She hesitated for a moment, then continued. I promised myself over and over again that I wouldn't ask you about reconciliation. Everyone told me it was impossible. But I have to ask. Is there any chance you can forgive me? Could we be together again? I took a deep breath and sipped my beer. Those are two different questions, Amy, I said finally. I've been thinking about the forgiveness part since we agreed to meet today. I promised myself that I'd try to forgive you. After a pause, I added, it'll take time, and I don't know if it's possible, but I'm going to try. I'll be honest, though. If I do forgive you, it'll be for the sake of the girls, our family, and myself. Not for you. After draining half the beer in my glass, I finished. That said, I'm not going to stop the divorce, and we're never going to get back together. Amy sniffled and nodded, her expression a mix of sadness and understanding. If I need help, if I need to talk, can I call you? She asked hesitantly. I wanted to shout, no, you're the last person I want to talk to. But instead, I stood, opened the refrigerator, grabbed another beer, and filled my glass. Regaining my composure, I replied, are you satisfied with the compromise? Amy nodded hesitantly. Except in emergencies, I said firmly. Let's work through our lawyers until the divorce is finalized. After that, I'll answer your calls. 7 months later, our divorce was finalized. On the first night in my new lakeside home, I sat on the back porch, staring at the serene water. It was my first night as a free man. In front of me was a table with a bottle of bourbon. Next to me in the refrigerator were a couple of high-alcohol craft beers. I debated whether I wanted the gentle buzz from the beer or the punch to the face from the bourbon when my phone rang. I smiled when I saw who was calling and answered. Hello, Amy. I'm really sad, she said softly. I needed to talk to someone. Stacy was right. One day, 5 years later, I woke up and the world felt lighter. The sky seemed a little bluer. The birds chirped a little louder, and life was finally getting better. Stacy relocated to our corporate headquarters in Dallas and is now the executive vice president of sales and marketing. She remains unmarried, her children are grown, and after a glass or two of wine, she'll admit she still enjoys the occasional thrill of a steamy one-night stand. Julie graduated with honors from college and now works as an engineer for a West Coast defense contractor. She's in a semi-serious relationship and is studying for her master's degree in the evenings. Julie has maintained a great relationship with both Amy and me, communicating with each of us weekly. Kate, whom we lovingly call Mole because she values her privacy so little, graduated high school, worked for a pharmaceutical company for 2 years, and was then accepted into Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. She's now engaged to another Mole, a fellow medical student, and they spend their days and nights studying together. I talk to Kate weekly, though I initiate most of our conversations. She rarely talks to her mother. My parents are in surprisingly good health for their age. They still live in Hartford, Connecticut, but spend the cold winters in a tiny one-bedroom condo in Clearwater, Florida. My mom has a monthly Saturday lunch with Amy, though my dad rarely joins them. Frank and Eileen are doing well despite several serious health issues. They alternate hosting dinners with my parents, who have become their close friends. Mary Beth and Phil moved to the Midwest about a year after our divorce. Mike followed 6 months later. Good riddance to every single one of them. Lucy and her children are thriving. It took her a while to start dating again, but once she did, she became very popular among eligible bachelors. Lucy has set high standards for herself and her children, and it shows. Lucy set high standards for her gentleman and eventually found Mr. Right. They just celebrated their first anniversary, and judging by the constant smiles on their faces, they still consider themselves newlyweds. Amy seems happy too. Aside from a very tense relationship with Kate, most of her other relationships have worked out. She's been dating a gentleman for 6 months now, and the last time we spoke, she said, "He could be the one." I have my fingers crossed for her and genuinely hope she stays happy. As for me, I'm doing well too. When Stacy left for Dallas, I took her place as division president. The added responsibilities are manageable, and I found fulfillment in my work. 2 years after my divorce, I reconnected with a familiar face. My cousin Lucy's cousin, Aggie. We both attended the graduation party of a mutual friend's daughter. Throughout the day, Aggie and I chatted several times, catching up and enjoying each other's company. As the older guests began leaving, Aggie grabbed my hand and said, "Let's go somewhere for a drink." I admit, Aggie can be a little insatiable. But for a man over 50 who can manage intimacy 2 or 3 times a day, it seems to work out perfectly. Fortunately, Aggie doesn't seem to mind my pace. What do you think of today's story? It seems to me that the man was completely justified in his decisions. Infidelity is truly unforgivable. And we'll see you in the next video.